The Discovery, Chapter 18, The Death of David Lawson. Midnight sat on her seat in the waiting room, tears steadily streaming down her face. The world around her passed by in a blur as she silently rocked back and forth on the chair. She couldn't even think. All she could do was sit there and wait. Her misery was only compounded by the incessant ticking of the clock as it sat on the wall, reminding her of every second she was away from David. Each passing hour seemed to drag on for an eternity as she waited for any kind of news.
What happened? He was fine. I thought we fixed him. Not again. Please, not again.
The evening turned into the late night, and eventually into the early morning. Midnight was wide awake the whole time, refusing to take even a minute of sleep for fear of the worst happening while she slept. Finally, the sound of someone else speaking to the receptionist broke the monotony of dead silence Midnight had suffered through. After a moment, the new pony approached her.
Midnight?
Stormshield asked. Midnight lifted her head just enough to see Storm through her disheveled mane. She barely managed to nod before her head drooped back down and her gaze fell to the floor. Storm quickly approached and placed a comforting hoof on Midnight's shoulder.
I heard about what happened. Has there been any news since?
Storm asked, her voice laced with concern.
No.
Was all Midnight could say.
I'm so sorry. How are you holding up?
Midnight didn't respond. She only managed to hang her head even lower. A tear dripped down from her eyes and hit the floor, answering Storm's question far better than words ever could.
Hey, it's gonna be okay. David's a tough stallion. He survived worse than this. He's gonna walk out of the room, good as new, and you two are going to live the rest of your lives together and be the happiest couple this side of Equestria.
Storm said, as she climbed onto the seat next to Midnight. She draped her wing over her shoulder. Midnight leaned her head on Storm's shoulder and closed her eyes.
I just want him to be okay.
She whispered.
I know. He's gonna be fine. I promise.
Storm said in her most comforting voice.
Why do bad things keep happening to him? I mean, 1 minute he was fine, and the next his nose is bleeding and he faints. I couldn't even do anything.
Midnight trailed off. Storm only hugged Midnight tighter with her wing and supported her as much as she could. More than once, she had to stop her own fearful tears from falling. She held them back, though. Guards never cried, after all. Storm's warm embrace did wonders for Midnight's tired mind, and within the hour she drifted off to sleep, still tucked under her wing. Storm allowed herself a sad smile for the graphite mare, and contented herself with simply keeping Midnight comfortable while she slept.
It's the least I can do for David and his mare,
Storm thought to herself. The sound of a door opening drew Storm's attention from Midnight to the new visitor for David. The first thing to catch her eye was the lavender coat and dark purple mane. There was no doubt in her mind that it was Princess Twilight.
Excuse me, is David here?
Twilight asked.
Yes, Princess. Midnight is here too.
Storm replied. Twilight breathed a sigh of relief and walked over to the two-seated mares. Her spirits seemed to lower slightly as she saw Midnight, fast asleep, and wrapped in Storm's wing.
Is she alright?
Twilight inquired.
Not really. She's taking this pretty hard. Poor thing pretty much cried herself to sleep. The receptionist told me that she was awake all night, worrying about him. I can't blame her.
Storm explained.
If I was in her position, I think I'd be much worse.
Twilight admitted with a half-smile.
Any news?
Storm shook her head.
I asked on the way in, but they only told me that he's in the emergency room, and that we wouldn't know until he was released. So, he's been in the ER the whole night?
Twilight asked in disbelief.
Yeah. Whatever happened, it must have been bad.
Storm said, each word seeming to weigh her down.
I hope he's alright. By the way, I don't think we've met. Are you a friend of David's?
Twilight asked, attempting to brighten the mood slightly.
Yeah, my name is Stormshield. Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Stormshield. I'm Twilight Sparkle, but please just call me Twilight. Any friend of David is a friend of mine.
Twilight said, holding out a hoof. Storm gently bumped Twilight's hoof, careful not to disturb Midnight as she slept.
So, how did you meet him?
Twilight asked.
Well, I met him back when he was just starting to learn about Equestria. He had a thing for petting ponies back then. Pissed off a noble or two, and I was called over to deal with it. I escorted him out of the room, and, well, we just sort of clicked. I really, really hope he's okay.
Storm explained.
Me too. I've known him since he first got here. We met every week to discuss his history and culture. I haven't seen him for a little while, but I came as soon as I heard about what happened.
Twilight replied.
You live in Ponyville, right, Twilight?
Storm asked.
Yes. Princess Celestia sent me a letter about an hour ago. She said that her and Luna would be coming by in a little bit.
Twilight answered.
Wow, I'm glad they're coming. It looks like David needs all the support he can get right now. He'll pull through. I know he will.
Twilight said, hopping onto the seat next to Storm.
So, know any good stories to pass the time?
Storm asked.
Well...
Midnight's eyes fluttered open to the sound of voices nearby. She slowly turned her head to the side to see a navy blue feathered wing draped over her wither. She sat up and turned to see the source of the comforting wing. Storm noticed the movement under her wing and turned to see Midnight as she sat upright. She retracted her wing and gently rubbed Midnight's wither with her hoof.
Hey, you feeling better?
Storm asked.
Barely.
Midnight answered.
I didn't miss anything, did I? Other than Princess Twilight's story and how she beat Ursa Minor? Nope.
Storm answered.
Princess Twilight is here? How long was I out for?
Midnight asked, seemingly surprised at the news.
Maybe an hour? Not too long. After the night you had, you should probably sleep some more. We'll wake you up if anything happens.
Storm said with a friendly smile.
Thanks, but I think I'll just stretch my hooves and walk around for a bit.
Midnight said, hopping off of the chair. She walked over to the receptionist to find Twilight heading back towards her.
Princess.
Midnight said with a slight bow of her head.
Midnight. Please call me Twilight. How are you?
Twilight said, concern weeding its way into her voice.
I'm alright. Thank you, Twilight. Did you just speak to the receptionist?
Midnight asked.
Yeah, I just spoke with her about David.
Twilight responded.
Any news?
Midnight asked, perking up slightly.
I'm afraid not. She just told me the same thing as last time. All they seem to know right now is that he's still in the ER.
Twilight admitted with a shake of her head. Midnight sighed and hung her head low again.
Alright. Thanks for checking,
she said as she started to head off.
Midnight, I understand that this is hard, but I know David will be alright.
Twilight comforted.
I just don't know what's wrong with him, and it's killing me inside. To know that his life is in danger and that I not only can help him again, but this time I don't know anything. I have absolutely no clue as to what happened to him. We dealt with his mental problems months ago, and several trips to multiple therapists confirmed that he was at least making progress with his guilt and other mental issues. Princess Luna didn't find any kind of magical damage in his mind, so that couldn't be it. He's been perfectly fine for the last 4 months, and now I just wish I knew. I'd rather face it than just sit here and wait to find out.
Midnight explained, frustration clear in her voice.
I'm sure that whatever the cause is will be brought to light soon enough. They have the best doctors in Candela working on him, Midnight. He's going to be alright. For all we know, this could be completely unrelated to what happened back on Heartswarming.
Twilight replied, trying her best to comfort the graphite mare.
I hope so. He's already survived so much. I'm just worried that there's a limit to how much he can take. I feel like if he has to endure any more, he might not be able to handle it.
Midnight admitted with a sad sigh.
You know David far better than I do, Midnight, and even I know he's going to be fine. I promise.
Twilight offered with a supportive smile. Before Midnight could answer, the front door swung open and Princess Celestia walked in. Following close behind her was Princess Luna, along with a small entourage of royal guards. They quickly fanned out to the other entrance points of the room, leaving one in the doorway they entered from.
Midnight, there you are. Are you alright?
Celestia's voice rang out.
Princess, I don't even know anymore. Still waiting on the news from the doctors right now.
Midnight said, barely giving a nod to the royal diarchs, let alone a bow.
We would have come sooner, however, we were predisposed with the axe. Leaving was almost impossible with how ridiculous their behavior was.
Luna explained, no small trace of annoyance in her voice. Midnight didn't answer. She only hung her head in silence. A sad frown forced its way onto Luna's face. She walked over to Midnight and draped a wing over her with her.
Come, Midnight. Sit with me for a while.
Luna gently offered. Midnight shakily nodded as she tried to keep the tears back yet again. Luna's soft and warm wings helped soothe her pain somewhat, before she was led to the seat. Luna sat down with Midnight right beside her, never once allowing her wing to detach from her side. After a few moments, Midnight crumbled and leaned her head onto Luna's wither. Her tears slowly streaked down her face into Luna's fur. The Princess of the Night seemed unfazed, and allowed the graphite unicorn to cry, while she simply held her close. Luna gazed up to find Celestia's worried face staring back at her. After exchanging a nod with her sister, she returned to caring for Midnight. Storm found her way out over to Midnight's opposite side and hopped onto the chair next to her. She draped her wing around her and below Luna's wing, effectively blanketing her in a warm, feathery embrace. No words were spoken. They only sat in silence. Sitting in a hospital, waiting to know what happened, that sucks. The anticipation really kills you, no pun intended. Anyway, let's get on to our not screwed up donators. Top donators: Jessie Smith, Star 630, BadassWaffle, Only One Thing, Ceru, Orion, and IronSky. Much for going to JockeTF, Talks Rayden, Narwhals, Blackmoonheart, Pastel, Sky, Sauce, and Roland, Sword, Brother, Mordred, Omicron, Library, Prince, 952, Wilker, Stunky, Rysel, Shadow Moon, Louis, JD, Chance, Across the Big Smoke, 69, Bobcat, GGF, Murder Princess, J1101, Calidus, The Little Mighty, and many more awesome people. Thank you all so much for watching this video and live life to the fullest.